Hello there and welcome to another Partners in Crime tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to learn how to make a reverse fracture effect on a text object in Blender. So before you get started, you want to have Blender downloaded and installed on your computer. Now Blender is free. If you don't have it downloaded, you can get it using the first link in the description below. Now, we're going to be using keyboard shortcuts a lot, so you'll need a numpad. If you don't have one, you want to have numpad emulation turned on in Blender so you can follow along. If you don't have it turned on, simply go into user preferences and enable it. So, now that we have that set up, let's get started. Now the first thing we're going to do is set up our camera and clear up our scene. So type X on your keyboard and click delete to delete the default cube. And then type numpad 7 on your keyboard, and then type Control and then Alt and then numpad 0 on your keyboard to bring the camera into top view. So now that we have our camera set up, we can now add the text object that we're going to fracture. Type Shift A on your keyboard and select text. Now type Tab to go into text edit mode, and you can erase the text and type your own custom text. So we're just going to type fracture and press Tab to exit text edit mode. Now we're going to center our text on the screen. So go into the text object data tab, scroll down and click center. Scroll up to zoom in, left click on this green arrow and just pull it down and then release. Left click and just adjust where your text is positioned on your screen. Alright. So now we've got it basically centered. Let's pull it up just a little bit more. We can now extrude it and make it 3D. So change the extrude value to 0.2 and change the bevel value to 0.007. And we're going to now choose a font that we have stored on our computer that we're going to apply to our text object. So click this folder here. And we're going to use the font called Nevis, and we'll include a download link for it in the description below. So you just want to direct Blender to wherever you downloaded that font on your computer, select the font, and then click Open Font. Type S and move your cursor out, and left click to confirm the scaling. And what we're going to do now is, let's type Z to go into wireframe view. Alright. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the bevel depth back to 0, go into the modifiers tab and click add modifier remesh. And let's change the octree depth to 7. We can do 8. Alright. Uncheck remove disconnected pieces, and now you can see we have a lot of squares forming to make up the geometry for our text. And that clean geometry is important because we're going to need it for our cell fracture effect. So if we type Z and go back into solid view, let's hit apply on this remesh modifier, and we'll have to convert it to a mesh object, and it'll automatically apply it once we do that. So just type Alt C on your keyboard in the viewport and select mesh from curve metasurf text. So we have our text object set up here, and let's just get the positioning just a little bit more right. Alright, so now we can fracture our mesh object, but before we do so, we're going to add some materials to it, and there'll be Cycles materials, so make sure you're in the Cycles render engine. Go into the materials tab, click new to add a new material, click the plus to add a new material slot, and then click new to add another new material. Now we can cell fracture this text object. So you want to make sure, let's split the screen down here, that you have the cell fracture add-on enabled in your user preferences. So in the add-on section here, you want to click the search box, type cell fracture, and if you see the box is checked, that means you have it enabled, but likely you'll need to check it and then click save user settings, and then you'll have this option here. So let's put that back there. Now we can type spacebar on our keyboard and type cell and get cell factor, select the mesh objects, and you just want to select that, and let's choose the settings. Now we want it to factor by its own vertices because we just cleaned them up and made them nice and square with the remesh modifier. So select own verts and change the source limit to 300. So we have around 300 factor objects. Change the recursion to 1. And we'll use the second material slot here, but it goes by 0, 1 here. So if you type the number 1, it'll use this material as the interior material for the fracture. Now we've got own verts 300 recursion, our material, and we're ready to get this started. So once we click OK, the cell factor is going to take a little bit of time to complete the process of factoring the text. So once you hit OK, you can just wait for Blender to work in the background. So we're just going to click OK. And now it's time to wait. Alright, so the cell factor add-on is done working. So let's move to the next layer at the bottom of the screen here by left clicking here, and you can see we have our fractured text object. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make the text object, or fractured text objects, be able to be affected by physics. So to do that, we're going to add in rigid bodies. So type rigid, and once you see add rigid bodies in the drop down dialog here, you want to select it, and now all of our fractured objects have physics enabled for them. So if you click play, you see we have our objects kind of coming off the screen there, and we don't want them to just drop down there. So we're going to turn off gravity. So go down here, rigid body fills weights, gravity, and pull that down to 0, and add in a force field. So Shift A, and we'll go down here, click force field, and click turbulence. And let's go into the physics tab in the right of the screen, and let's change the strength to 5. And let's go back into the scene rigid bodies section, and click rigid body cache, and select bake all dynamics. And they're just gonna wait for Blender to just finish baking it. So it's 250 frames, and it's pretty much It's going pretty fast. Now it's pretty much done, and you can play this out. And you can see we've got the fracture coming out. Now you can change it to AV sync so we get it playing a little bit more accurately to how it should look. And that's great. But this is our text breaking apart, and we want to make it come together, and that's what the tutorial is all about. So how are we going to make it come together? So basically we want it to be as if it's playing backwards, as shown here, but we'd have to use keyframes. So let's go to the physics section here, right click on this, and you'll see bake to keyframes as an option here. The reason we want to use keyframes is because we can edit keyframes and change their position. So basically we're going to reverse the animation of all of these objects. Now we'll have to select them first. So type A on your keyboard and then type A again, and then you'll have them all selected and ready to bake the keyframes. So again, once it's time to start baking, we'll have to wait a little bit. So we'll bake the keyframes and click OK and just wait. So we have our keyframes now, and it is looking really nice. What we're going to do now is split the screen here, go into the dope sheet, and this is where the magic happens. You want to left click on this cursor to make sure that we only have the objects that we have selected, so that we're only editing the keyframes for what we have selected here. Then just type S-1 on your keyboard. So just type S and then minus and then type the number 1 and then type enter, and your animation should be nicely reversed. Now our keyframes are kind of going all the way back here, so we're going to have to move them. So GX and just move them up here. And left click, that's pretty good. Alright. Rewind. Alt A and play this, and you can see we have our fractured text coming together. And this can be used for objects too, so if you fracture, like say a logo, you can make it come together like this. And it's looking pretty good so far. So we've got our text fractured. One thing we want to do is we want to make it look good. So if we go into render view, you can see we've just got some basic materials. Well, no materials added to our text. It's just some plain grayness. And let's add some fun colors. But first we're going to add in the background. So check use nodes and go into the node editor. And go into the world node editor, and I'm using my scroll wheel to just scroll and zoom in and out, and just click add texture, noise texture. Let's go back to solid view to make this a little bit easier for our computer. One thing you want to note is that you want to save your file as you're working on it, so you click file save as and save it wherever you want on your computer, and just maybe name it working tutorial and just save your file. Alright, so let's hook this noise texture up to the background color input here. Go to render view, and you can see we've got the noise working in the background here. So go back to, actually we can leave it in render view now, and we can right click on one of our cell fractured objects, go into the material settings, and let's change the material to a glossy material. So the reason we added in that noise texture for the background was so we could have something for the glossiness to reflect off of. Now it looks pretty good. And let's go to the material 2 and make that a glossy material as well. Now let's give it a little bit of a blue tint, and in the outward glossiness let's just make it blue. And let's put the roughness up to 0.1. And let's go into the render settings and change let's see, let's check this transparent box here, and now we have a transparent background for our scene. So we've got our materials, we got our animation, we've got a nice look to our scene. So to avoid some of the text errors that you can see here, we'll just cheat a little bit with the animation. Like right after the text comes together, most of the fracture comes together, you can go to solid view. You can actually go to the first layer, but let's hold on shift and select it. Alright, and you can see we should have our original text object here. So let's scroll through and you can see this should be our original text object. We can go into the materials section, click this material here, and click plus, and let's go into the object material settings, and let's click add shader mix shader, put it up here, and add shader transparent. Alright, so what we're going to do is around the frame where we can see our where we can kind of see our text come in, we're going to make our original object just fade in. So let's put the factor down to 0, hover your cursor over that and type I, rewind maybe around here, move that up, hover your cursor over that and type I. Alright, so now if we play this through, our original text object should fade in and cover our fractured objects. And we have a pretty nice animation here. So we've got the lamp here shining some light on the text, and if you like the look of that lamp, you can left click on it and change it to a sun lamp. And let's go back into solid mode and let's just get the rotation on the text right. So G, left click, and just double tap R, move your cursor on it and left click. Then you can get back to render view, and you can see we got some more lighting. So you can just mess around with the lighting by typing R and just moving the lamp around until you get your preferred lighting. Let's type Alt R and reset the lighting, and that looks pretty good. You can check use nodes and put the strength down to 0.1, and now we got a little bit of lighting going on our text. So we can get a little bit more into lighting, but though we're pretty much finished with this tutorial since we've already achieved our text fracture effect with the little text fade in at the end. So if we go into render view, you can see we got our text coming in, and then we'll have our original text object fade in over the fractures once they come together. So all in all, it's a pretty nice effect. So if you liked this video and found it helpful, hit that like button below, and if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit that bell to turn on notifications. If you just want to support our channel and get some cool Blender kits, check out our store where you can find some neat Blender kits and courses. That's it for the video now, and thanks for watching, and subscribe for more tutorials from partners in coordinated rendering of ideas, motion, and effects.